proceedings have started before the withdrawal took effect, then the ICC retains jurisdiction. So how do we explain that aspect?
It's just a practical consideration that we have to look at. No? When you withdraw from the ICC and you cease to become a member, then what activities can they hold in your country that will be sanctioned by your country as part of a treaty participant? Since you are no longer a treaty participant, you are no longer part of the ICC. So it's just logical that if you're not part of the ICC, the activities of the ICC will cease as far as your country is concerned. The jurisdictional issue then comes in, because if they want to conduct an activity in this country, it has to be sanctioned by the Philippine government. But since we are no longer members of the ICC, then what activities can be sanctioned when we're no longer part of that organization? So I think it's just practical, and it's just logical that once you withdraw from the treaty, then everything else that goes with it ceases.
So there's no room, Sec, that the ICC might resort to other means available to them to continue the probe?
To continue the probe, you need a compulsory process. Compulsory process means that you have people who will be taking oaths, and there will be a law in place. There will be the law of the state in place. So how can they, what law will they use when they start investigating in the Philippines if they will not pass through Philippine authorities? I think there's a change in circumstances already. We can no longer, there are two international law maxims that are applicable to this. And probably for this purpose itself, it's rebus sic stantibus, which means that there's already a change in fundamental circumstances, or fundamental change in the prevailing circumstances.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Nancy Carvajal. Sir, there are reports this morning that the senators would try to ask during EDAC to reconsider the decision of President Marcos. And how is that? Is there still room for that?
We're a democracy. We have three branches of government. The legislature can always speak with the executive on this matter. And the person who will make the decision for us is President Marcos himself. Mm-hmm. So we're not closing the door to anything, especially dialogue with the Senate, since we have to work together to bring the country forward in the next few years, at least for the 6 years that the people have elected the president.
Follow up, sir. This decision was reached because of President Duterte's war on drugs. So aren't we, as a country, depriving other, other countrymen if ever merong ibang kaso that would involve ICC for assistance?
I think that, first of all, you have to understand what the ICC is all about. No? It is the International Criminal Court, which was founded to run after individuals within a state, vis-a-vis the ICJ, which is put up to go against states themselves. So, when you have a functional judicial system, I think it's indisputable that our courts are functioning. The prosecution is functioning. We are here right now as part of the Department of Justice, which is in charge of prosecution of crimes, enforcement even with the NBI, corrections when you have to make people serve the penalty for crimes, correction services. We have the Bureau of Pardon and Parole, which are all internationally standard, no? And we have Parole and Probation Board. This means that we have a functioning judicial system. So I don't think that there's any deprivation involved here, since what is involved is domestic law and the way that we run our country. And it is a democratic country. The Supreme Court is fully independent of the executive, and the legislative is also completely independent of the executive. It is a functioning democracy. It's indisputable that we are a functioning democracy. So there's no deprivation involved. And if there are crimes that people want to be pursued by government, they can always go to the police, they can go to the NBI, they can go to the Department of Justice and the agencies under it, including the fiscal's offices in the cities and in the provinces. So we have a functioning judicial system. And the issue before the ICC is to run after criminals or people who commit crimes, and probably even crimes against humanity, if you want to classify them as such. So there is no deprivation at all. I don't see any, unless you can pinpoint something that you may wish to be discussed further.
Thank you, sir. Maybe later.
Thank you.
Hi, sir. Sir, of course, that's the line of the government.
Can you
Sir,
introduce yourself,
Sir,
please?
I'm Andrew po from CNN Philippines.
CNN.
Yes, sir. Sir, yung nga po nasabi na parang domestic mechanisms are working, but the drug war panel review of former SOJ Guevara yielded a few cases and only a few have been filed before the courts. Now, how will you change that? How aggressive will be your under your term, the drug war panel review, considering that there are thousands of the drug war deaths involved under the war on drugs of the past admin?
I think I'd like to ask Undersecretary Raul Vasquez to answer for us.
Actually, good afternoon. Actually, there are many reforms that are being undertaken and have already started. The first one is actually the simplification of the appeals process, and that was covered by Department Circular number 27, series of 2022. And this means that the process would now be simplified. The cases that would be elevated to the office of the Secretary would be delimited to cases that are cognizable by the regional trial courts, while we have empowered the regional state prosecutors and the Prosecutor General as regional state prosecutor for Metro Manila to render decisions with finality on appeals relating to cases cognizable by the Metropolitan Trial Court. And we are happy to inform everyone, our country, that since we assumed office last July 1, 2022, upon the strict directive of our good secretary, we have been current, we're trying to make current all recently filed cases from July 1 up to the present, to finish them all, the petitions for review, within the mandated 60-day period of suspension of arraignment, in order to give life and true meaning to the administration of justice, focusing on indigent litigants, cases that are handled pro bono by lawyers and the IBP particularly, and cases that are handled by the PAO, Public Attorney's Office. There are many reforms that are still being thought out, and that would be implemented soon, as all of us, upon the strict direction and guidance of our good secretary, hit the ground running, so to speak, because we knew the problems are. We've been, USEC, Jesse Andres and I came from private law practice, so we all know, and we've been confronted with these issues day in, day out, since we started our law practice decades ago. Thank you.
Can I add something?
Attorney Jesse Andres, Undersecretary Andres will also add something.
If I may add to that discussion, Mr. Secretary, if you look at the reason why the ICC may come in, it should be the inability of the present state of government to address the institutional requirements to attain justice. However, it's very clear based on existing laws and existing agencies and government instrumentalities that everything is being addressed at our own level competently and adequately through institutional measures. In fact, data shows that the institutional measures are working and that convictions are being done based on cases that have been filed in court. All the extra-legal killings that have been filed in court have been addressed by the prosecution by the Department of Justice through the prosecution service, and the courts have actually rendered judgment in several cases, and we can even cite numbers on recent cases where 18 individuals, uniformed personnel, were subjected to trial, and the court has rendered conviction, a judgment of conviction on the murder cases filed against these individuals who committed killings in the course of their work. So, in other words, there is nothing that the present system is not adequately addressing, and that institutions are working, and therefore we should leave it to the institutions within our government to address these issues.
But what will happen to the drug war panel? Will it still continue to exist?
We're still collating some data for the cases that have been filed. We are pursuing these cases. But of course, the problem will always be the dearth of witnesses. There's always a lack of witnesses that are needed to be able to prosecute a case successfully. It would be easy to file 100, 200, 300 cases, but for them to be successfully prosecuted is another matter. If there are witnesses who want to come forward, I can assure you that we will take care of the witnesses and give them protection. And if that's what's needed. We have a witness protection program under our government right now, under the DOJ. It has been there, institutionalized. And for those who really want to come forward to be a witness in a criminal prosecution involving what you call extrajudicial killings, then please come forward. We will welcome these people who wish to put forward their testimonies. The work is ongoing right now. Maybe the other problem that we see coming also is the fact that once we look at the six terms, because there is a time-bound thing here. The last 6 years prior to our coming in is pointed out as the period for which we should investigate. But when we start answering those questions, then people will go back another 5 years to 2011 and say, oh, there were other crimes committed in 2011. What is clear is that it is a responsibility to pursue these cases as long as they have not prescribed, and the government can still run after the malefactors here. So we're just pushing through with all the investigations that are there, but I'm telling you, our problem really is a lack of witnesses. If witnesses want to come forward, we will welcome them and help them and pursue the cases that they want to testify in.
Mr. Secretary, in addition to that, the government has already adopted what we call a whole-of-government approach. It's a multi-sectoral approach which does not only include the side of the Department of Justice, but also the side of private sector, non-governmental organizations, and media. And this whole-of-government approach is effective in addressing all these concerns on extralegal killings. It is, as you know, there are no more unabated killings as of today. In fact, record shows that there are no unenforced disappearances or torture in the last 3 years. And that means the government is in place and in control. So that is what we believe in, and that is what excludes the ICC from exercising its powers over us. Our institutions are intact and working.
Good afternoon, sirs. Lian Buon po from Rappler. Sir, how assertive and transparent would the DOJ drug war review be under you? Because in the past, the PNP would only share 56, tas they cut down pa nga to 52, and the DOJ can't seem to, assert its place to get more. The PNP, sir, only shared originally 56 case files out of the thousands, and then it cut it down to 52. And the DOJ can't seem to assert its place na kumuha pa ng maraming case files. And then whatever the DOJ had, it didn't share with the CHR because there were concerns with the security sector. So in your drug war review, how assertive would you be to get all the case files, and how transparent would you be in sharing what you get and what you have?
It's the duty of every law enforcement agent to turn over to us the case files. There's no ifs and buts there. So if they think there's a directive needed for that,
Yeah, this is the final result.
Mr. Secretary, if I may add, there is now a serious effort undertaken by the DOJ under Secretary Boying Remulla and the DILG under Secretary Benhur Abalos to have a joint and common effort to have a more efficient and productive law enforcement and prosecution. In fact, 2 weeks ago, there was a press conference that was handled by the two good secretaries, whereby they manifested the readiness and the willingness to hold hands, so to speak, in order to implement a fast, efficient, and inexpensive administration of justice, because both of them knew that there are serious problems confronting us, and we are not shirking from the responsibility of embracing them all and trying to resolve each one of them to the best of our abilities.
Just to add to that, you referred to the 52 cases, nanlaban cases. And to be transparent, we can also report to you that some of the cases have been dismissed, 6 of them. But however, 7 have been already subject of a case build-up, and these are already filed in court, and we're very confident with the evidence to be presented in these 7 cases. You know, the importance in criminal justice is the certainty of punishment. And if we are able to get the convictions of these 7 cases, then we have attained our purpose.
So just to be categorical, you would get more case files from PNP, and would you share them with the CHR?
Prior to our assumption to office, there were 250 other cases referred to the NBI by Secretary Guevara. And the NBI is working on them. At least. The real problem here is really, there are cases where people have been killed, but there is no witness, there's nothing to start with. How can you start with a case? Can you file a case when you have no person to accuse and you have no suspects to accost? So these are unsolved cases. That's why we need witnesses. Kailangan namin ebidensya at saka testigo. Hindi kami pwedeng maghabol ng kwento lang. O kaya sabihin sa amin, uy, marami pinatay, dapat naparusahan lahat yan. Hindi po. Kailangan po may testigo at may kaso pong fina-file at may due process po sa lahat ng mga taong aakusahan ng kasalanan sa batas. So, it's easier said than done. Madali pong pumuna, mahirap pong patunayan lahat yan kung wala hong testigo tsaka ibang ebidensya. Yun lang po yung problema namin dun eh. Kung may ebidensya po at may testigo, tuloy-tuloy po yan. Wala akong problema.
Yeah. Again, Mr. Secretary, with respect to the witnesses, I hope the media would understand that securing the witnesses is an important task, and that the possible perpetrators of these extralegal killings are not state-sponsored individuals or uniformed personnel. So that makes it doubly hard. If the perpetrator is a uniformed personnel, we can readily investigate and file the case, because the witnesses would be, the people surrounding the uniformed personnel. But a lot of these perpetrators are extralegal killings coming from armed groups, from local terrorist groups, bandits, and other lawless elements in far-flung places, not here. So you can imagine the witnesses' hesitance to provide themselves as evidence to these killings. So look at it from that point of view, that it's not only government which is possibly involved in these extralegal killings, but the majority of these cases are non-state-sponsored perpetrators. These are armed groups, lawless elements, terrorist groups. So these are also the people that the media should expose and, try to get their support so that witnesses can come forward.
Mr. Secretary, let it not be said that despite the fact that most of these so-called cases of lawless violence were perpetrated by armed groups or people outside the pale of law, the law enforcement agencies still try to and strive to ensure that these people who committed these dastardly crimes would be brought back to justice and made to answer for their crimes. But as mentioned by the good secretary and Yusek Andres, the difficulties are almost insurmountable. But the Department of Justice, I'm taking this as an opportunity to say that under the leadership of our action-oriented secretary, who gives us deadlines so fast that we need to do things as fast as we could, we will really be doing everything in order to pursue justice and serve the people in order for them to have their, day in court.
Sir, sorry, just a categorical answer, please. Would you share what you have with the CHR? All the files that you have, you would share everything with the CHR?
Yes.
Sir, last na, okay lang Kuya Mitch, last na lang from me. Sir, some experts of the ICC are saying that yung jurisdiction, it's not only looking at whether our justice system is working. It is whether our justice system looking at the same individuals and conduct as they are. And this was tweeted also by Senator De Lima. Are you prepared to ask the question of whether these killings were ordered by President Duterte or any of his generals?
I think that it's a question with not an answer. Are you asking a question or are you stating what you think is a fact? Because I don't see a question coming from you.
It was tweeted by Senator De Lima. Are you ready to ask the question of, when you're investigating, are you ready to ask the question during the course of the investigation if this at all linked back to President Duterte or any of his
Kahit sino
generals?
pa. Wala naman tayo sinasanto eh. Kahit sino pa yan. Diba? Bakit nyo ba sasabihin na hindi namin kayang gawin itong bagay na ito? Eh, nasubukan nyo na ba yung aming will para maayos lahat yan? Diba? Para naman sobrang loaded yan na you're already presuming something that is not there as a fact. Hindi naman fact yun eh. Diba? I think that's too biased for us to even consider a statement like that.
Sir, good afternoon po. Thank you for calling the press conference, sir. So I have 3 questions para hindi ko nakukunin uli yung mic. My first question, sir, may be better answered by another agency, pero without stepping on the toes of that agency, are there any concerns in this administration, that this move of rejecting ICC intrusion to the Philippines would make the Philippines as a pariah of sorts and would reflect poorly on the Philippines as a member of the family of nations? Sorry, yun muna yung first question ko. Second question, sir, you mentioned that 6 out of the 52 initial cases turned over to the PNP, by the PNP to the DOJ has been dismissed. Are the 6, does it involve 6 separate deaths or more deaths but in 6 cases? And third, sir, nakalimutan ko, mamaya talaga siya.
Unahin natin yung paraya, no? Yung statement mo na pwede tayong maging paraya sa Community of Nations. Ang Amerika hindi member na ICC. Ang China hindi member na ICC. Ang Russia hindi member na ICC. Marami naman hindi member na ICC eh. Are they pariahs? Are we saying that their systems don't work? Ano ba to? Is it a club that says, if you don't belong here, you are no good? Hindi naman eh. So it's just a choice that we have, whether to join or not to join. And I think that we are fully within our rights not to join. Diba? Hindi naman natin kailangang sumunod sa uso eh. Kung yan ba uso ba, kailangan sumunod tayo. Hindi naman ganun to eh, diba? Ano yung pangalawang tanong mo?
Well, based on the documents that we have, 6 refers to 6 deaths. And for purposes of the investigation, they did not find sufficient evidence, to indict people with respect to 6 deaths. But with respect to the 7 they filed, and the rest is still undergoing case build-up, still ongoing. We don't want to file half-baked cases.
Ano yan? Alam niyo yan, no? Yung compulsory process ang pinakamahalaga sa lahat. Pag inimbita ka na magtumestigo sa isang investigasyon, ang imbitasyon na yan ay parang sinasabi sa iyo, pag hindi ka sumama sa imbitasyon, baka meron ka tinatago. Di ba? Yun naman ang ating iniisip lagi. That's the value of having a compulsory process in any society. Kaya nga sinasabi ko nga, if the ICC wants to go here and try to run things their own way under our legal system, anong compulsory process ang gagamitin nila? Kaya nga sinasabi namin parang kahit ano pang provisional Rome Statute ang natin, ang ating isite, pag hindi talaga aakma, hindi talaga pwedeng umandar, hindi talaga aandar. Kasi nga, wala na nga sa jurisdiction di ba? Yun nga. So, pagdating dito sa mga kaso na kinakailangan ng testigo para mag-case build-up, syempre umaandar ang ating intelligence arm, umaandar ang ating mga ahente ng bayan para tingnan ang mga ebidensya pwedeng makalap. Sinisikap natin ikalap talaga yan. Kaya nga, ang aking, kanina pa sinasabi, ang aking lang isang tugon dito, kung meron hong nakasaksi sa ganitong pangyayari, maaari ho kayo lumapit sa amin. At magtiwala po kayo, hindi ho kayo mapapahamak pag kayo ho nagsabi ng totoo sa amin. Yun naman mahalaga sa lahat, di ba? At meron kayong pwedeng sabihan ng isang pangyayari at yun po ay kikilos upang mapatupad ang batas. Kasi isang problema sa atin sa matagal na panahon, maraming ayaw tumestigo, natatakot tumestigo, sapagkat sinasabi nila, mahihirapan lang ang buhay nila pag tumestigo sila. Hindi po. Maaari po nating bunuin magkasama yan at meron namang hong programa ang gobyerno para tumulong sa mga taong titistigo sa mga naganap na krimen. Kung meron kayong alam at meron tungkol sa naganap na krimen, kayo mismo nakakita, maganda ho kung kausapin nyo kami at tingnan nyo anong gagawin namin. Kami po naman po ay maaasahan nyo pagdating sa bagay na ito.
I can just give you the exact details on the 6th. One was already acquitted by the court. One, there were no leads and witnesses did not want. The family also expressed their desire not to reopen the investigation. And another one is the same. The relative victim expressed desire not to pursue the investigation. And one was a finding that there was no foul play during the conduct of the buy-bust operation. So these are the different dispositions, and it shows that evidence is lacking or the families did not want to pursue the case. So there's nothing else that the prosecutors can do if there is a dearth of witnesses.
No. I was referring to the appeals. The appeals. The filing of cases will still emanate from the places where the crimes are committed. Jurisdiction in criminal cases is territorial, normally. But there is a special provision which authorizes the Prosecutor General in certain cases, heinous crime, kidnapping for ransom, drugs cases, and then when national security is involved, where it is the main office through the Prosecutor General that conducts the preliminary investigation. But by and large, as a rule, it will be conducted by the local fiscals or prosecutors in the cities or provinces where they were committed. Yeah. Actually, yeah, there are mechanisms under our rules. Even the courts allow a transfer of venue. And similarly, the Department of Justice can also take over under the general power of the Secretary of Supervision and Control over the National Prosecution Service. He can take over any case anywhere in the Philippines. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Pwede yung direct na i-file dito. Pero siguro pwede ko sabihin sa inyo, no? Pwede sila mag-file sa regional office ng police. Pwede sila mag-file sa regional office ng prosecution. Sa regional office po ng DOJ. Pwede ho mag-file dito po sa Manila. Pwede ho yan eh. Kapag na-endanger po ang buhay nila at gusto nilang tumistigo, pwede ho dito nilang diretso eh. Dito sa... Eh baka naman walang showing po na talagang delikado ang lahat. Sige, para ano nyo sa amin. Sige pa.
Good afternoon, Sir Joel San Juan from Business Mirror. Although we are no longer part of the ICC, you said we're still going to provide them with information. What kind of information are you going to provide the ICC? And are you not worried that this might be used by the ICC to pursue its investigation against people involved in the anti-illegal drug?
We are following the principle of comity between nations. Due respect lang to all of them. That it's not a matter of compliance. We are not doing this because we have to comply with anything. We will just furnish them the information just to show that if they have request for the information, we will give it to them out of courtesy and comity. Yun po ang pinakamahalaga na prinsipyo po dyan.
Sir, parang voluntarily, will you be submitting information or would you wait for a specific request from the ICC?
Well, the request would be appreciated because why should we give away data to parties who are not interested in what we have to give? Kung talagang gusto nila, hingin nila sa amin, ibibigay namin. Yung kaya namin ibigay, yung available sa amin sa aming mga kamay, sa oras na yan.
What kind of information are you, can you give or willingly give to the ICC?
Ang example nga dyan, how our justice system is functioning. Basically, yung reflective pa rin yan ng interest ng ICC. Kasi alam namin ang gusto ng ICC, di ba? So we can give them the information that they may be interested in. Ito lang nga yan, no? Sabihin natin, may September 8 deadline. Pumasok kami dito July 1. Ilang buwan yun? So you're talking about 39 days in office, and then they expect us to pull off a miracle, answering 11 years of questions. Hindi naman siguro fair yun, di ba? 39 days pa lang kami sa opisina on September 8. Tapos, ang tanong nila, the last 11 years, ba't din nyo sabihin sa amin? Is it right? Is it fair? Diba? Yun lang naman yun eh. If they're really after fairness, and they're not really subject to any political agenda, hoping that they're not, then of course, everything will be better, di ba? Basta yun lang. In the 39 days that we're here, we will give you what we have. If you want the information for the last 11 years, because that's where it's going to anyway, alam nyo na, hindi namin kaya ibigay yan kasi 39 days lang nga kami rito.
Thank you, sir.
69 days.
Sir, naalala ko lang pala, sir. You mentioned, sir, that major superpowers have declined membership in the Rome Statute and the ICC And so why should we? Basically, that's what you're saying. Sir, but I think, would it be proper to say that the basis of the major superpowers' rejection of the Rome Statute in the ICC was to protect their troops in imperialist, or shall you say, imperialist missions? Is it the same with the Philippines? Are we protecting abusive state troops?
Malayo yata yun. I think that's stretching it down too much. No? Malayo na yun, malayo na.
Sir, good afternoon. Bert Moso po sa DWIZ. So mas dyan sa ICC at saka sa drug war. Dito po ang talagang totoo problema. May program na ba ang kalihim namin para doon sa mga PETRED? Petition for review filed in Department of Justice. Kasi inabot na siya riyan ng may mga Jurassic cases na dyan. Na halos yung mga litigants na wala na nga yata sa mundong ito.
Okay.
Pero hindi pa rin resolve. Yun lang po.
Since we arrived here, may backlog ba tayo? We have acted on every case submitted to us on PETREV since we arrived. About the 26,000 cases that inherited, we are doing something about it. Number one, we're auditing. How many of them have already been decided by the courts? How many of them have been dismissed? And how many of them are ongoing trial and how many of them are still being pursued by the people who filed the petition for review? Now, we have options on what to do with them. After the audit, we're conducting the audit now. Let's say by the time that September comes, we will know the figures, then we go on step 2. And step 2 would probably be a very radical one. We will archive everything and tell those who are still interested in pursuing their PETREVs to file one more pleading. We will publish this in the newspaper, telling them about our intention and what they can file so that we can still look for your cases to be reviewed. Remember, 26,000 cases is more or less the average of around 7 years of cases that have been here and acted upon. So, but ang target namin, to finish everything by the end of this year. That's our target. That's our personally set target para talagang matapos na to. And then we already changed the rules on what can be appealed so that we will have limited appeals here and that most of it will just be fought in court. Except, of course, when there is a miscarriage of justice pointed out to us, then the general power of the SOJ will come in so that we can correct whatever abuses there are or whatever miscarriage of justice is being made in any part of the country.
Sir, you're saying na yung 26,000 na yon before you entered in Department of Justice, yun lang ang i-archive ninyo. Pero the rest na since July 1 na pumasok kayo, yun ang sinasabi niyo siguradong hindi niyo pababayaan. So,
yes.
Paano sir paano magiging yung 26,000 na yan? Hindi ba parang kawawa naman yung mga naghihintay?
Sa 26,000 na yan, ang hula lang namin sa pakiramdam namin sa tingin sa kaso, ang mga siguro 25% of them have been decided. Nagkaroon ng desisyon ng korte. Kasi marami dyan, 10 years old na.
More than, sir.
More of them.
May 1900 pa dyan akong nalaman.
1990s naman.
May 1990s pa.
1990s nga. 1990. Ibig sabihin
Kaya nga ganun. Marami nga dyan dismissed na, decided na, na-arraign na, nakakulong na yung tao, namatay na yung mga akusado. Kaya nga, sa 26,000 ang mabubuhay dyan, marahil na kaso, may mga 3,000 lang yan. 3,000 cases lang yan. Ang pinakamarami ang tingin namin. Pero yan, bubunuin namin yan. We will ask all the prosecutors on duty here to help us finish these cases para we can start on a clean slate. Plus the target is really to start on a clean slate and be up to date again with our jobs for this purpose.
This one, sir, isa na lang.
Just to address your point, we have already constituted a team to make sure that the 60-day period allowed by the courts for us to act on the petition for review will be done within that period.
Current.
60 days.
Current.
So
And-
right
yeah.
now, all petitions for review that are addressed by this office will be resolved within that 60-day period or much earlier.
And currently, we are doing that. The two of us have divided these new, recently filed cases, and we are more or less up to date. And at the same time, sir, as mentioned earlier, there is this intention as well as the policy of empowering the lower-ranking regional state prosecutors and the Prosecutor General as the regional state prosecutor for Metro Manila. And that empowerment carries with it responsibilities as well. Parang Spider-Man. With greater power comes greater responsibility. And for that reason, the present appeals rule, it includes a need for the creation of a prosecution integrity board, similar to the judicial integrity board, to ensure that the prosecutors who have been empowered with greater responsibilities on appeals would do their jobs well, and to ensure that that fair play would always govern all resolution of cases. At least that's the idea.
Thank you.
This is the last question. The Secretary has a next engagement that he has to attend to.
For clarification. Kasi sir, yung the issue sa Pogo, sir, kasi there are videos, sir, that some of us received na tuloy rin yung crimes against these Chinese employees ng Pogo. And your order was to stop the rescue, and I understand you reiterated that in many...
Kahapon sa NBI.
Also, sir, yeah.
It was a closed-door conference, but if they want to tell you, I know who's telling you anyway. No? But I'll tell you this. No? I'll tell you this. No? Ang problema kasi yan sa mga rescue na yan, there's no single pending case based on the rescue for kidnapping and no single person detained for it. So ano nangyayari? Sa basketball, ang referee binabayaran ng 1,000 per game para mag-referee. Baka naman dito, ginagawa rin kami referee. Di ba? Walang kaso eh. I mean, sayang ang resources ng gobyerno, maglalaro sila ng laro nila, tapos re-rescuehin, tapos walang kaso. Anong ginawa ng alagad ng batas? Tama ba ang ginawa nila? Ba't walang kaso? Kung meron talagang na-violate na rights, bakit walang kaso? Ayun ang hinahanap ko sa kanila kahapon. Nung walang masabi sa akin kahit isang kaso, sabi ko, anong ginagawa niyo nagre-rescue? Eh, paano yung kung may madisgrasyang NBI agent sa pagre-rescue na yan? Madisgrasya, tapos wala naman palang kastorya-storya, at wala naman, inaareglo lang pala pagkatapos. Anong papel natin dyan?
Clarification, sir. Indulge. Because you own the, alam niyo na, sir, you own your family at least.
Our family sold a facility to a POGO operator. And we have nothing to do with it anymore. Wala na ho kaming pakialam doon. Kaya 5 duling, wala na ho kaming pakialam.
Sold na, sold.
Sold na yun.
Years ago.
2018, nung nawala na ho sabi niya.
One more question, pwede. Yung, sorry. Meron kasi, there's, medyo may question doon sa, kay OIC, the store, sir, na, tama ba? Babalik siya sa kanyang, based on, I was able to obtain a copy of the civil service opinion, na babalik, pinalitan na siya, sir, but babalik siya as, yung previous, what you call this? Previous position.
We'll see if that will happen. Di pa natin alam. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ano, tapos na.
We hope the Secretary and the other secretaries have
Sorry ho.
sufficiently...
Ano talaga? We'll have another press con naman. Hindi pa tapos. May 2 appointment pa ako hinihintay. I'm just waiting for 2. 2 more appointments for the USEC and 4 more appointments for ASEC. No, actually, all of them are free to interact with the agencies, but there are just special assignments for some of them, special areas of concern. But they will have plenary powers under me to act as my alter ego, and they know what to do naman. Magkakasundo naman lahat yan. Walang competition dito. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.